In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, a puzzling craft is discovered, prompting the U.S. Navy to summon a team of scientists for investigation. Transported by helicopter to a vessel stationed amidst the vast expanse of ocean, they are briefed by Navy Captain Barnes on the remarkable find: a spacecraft. Notably, psychologist Norman's inclusion in the team is attributed to his expertise in unidentified life forms, a subject matter the Navy has been leveraging as a reference point. Entombed beneath a substantial 8-yard layer of coral lies the spacecraft, indicating an astonishing tenure of 3 centuries submerged since its presumed crash onto Earth in the year 1709. Speculations arise regarding potential life forms inhabiting the vessel, thus prompting the assembly of scientists with the aim to establish communication, discern the origins of the extraterrestrial visitors, and preempt any prospective threat of invasion. Notably, Barnes highlights the Navy's detection of a faint, persistent hum via sonar, suggesting operational activity within the confines of the spacecraft. As the team prepares for their underwater descent, Norman confides in mathematician Harry, revealing the fabrication of his report, a revelation met with Harry's solemn vow of secrecy. Subsequently, the scientists board a submarine bound for a structure known as the Habitat, established by the Navy as a research base for their investigation. Upon reaching sufficient depth, the awestruck team is greeted by the awe-inspiring sight of the colossal spacecraft, its sheer magnitude leaving them astounded. Preparations ensue as a Navy dive team readies a robot tasked with unlocking the spacecraft's doors, prompting the scientists to traverse from the Habitat to the vessel on foot. However, upon arrival at the airlock, their attempts to access it are thwarted, leading astrophysicist Ted to resort to a makeshift solution involving a hammer and chisel in an endeavor to force entry. Despite their efforts, the door remains impervious, leaving behind a perplexing chip, which Harry finds particularly curious, considering the lack of damage from the crash juxtaposed with the efficacy of rudimentary tools in causing harm. In a pivotal moment, marine biologist Beth discerns a subtle emanation of heat radiating from the door, prompting Barnes to swiftly order a retreat. However, their retreat is halted as they witness the door mysteriously unlatch and swing open of its own accord. With cautious resolve, the team ventures inside, where Beth's keen observation reveals the presence of footprints on the floor, indicating prior occupancy. Subsequently, the team disperses to explore different sections of the vessel. In a moment of intimacy, Norman confides in Beth, divulging the falsity of his report and acknowledging his reliance on ideas borrowed from science fiction writers. Advancing further into the vessel, the duo encounters a platform that autonomously propels them to the subsequent level. However, their progress is abruptly halted by Beth's startled cry upon discovering a seated figure, a human corpse bearing signs of fatal blunt force trauma, clutching a packet of smokehouse almonds. The presence of this familiar snack leads them to deduce that they are aboard an American craft. Upon inspecting the ship's computer, Beth is taken aback to find all records documented in English. Intriguingly, the flight logs are marked with dates from the year 43 and reference an enigmatic event labeled Unknown Entry Event. Activating the holographic display, the duo is enveloped in a vivid projection depicting a spacecraft navigating into the depths of a black hole. Armed with this newfound revelation, they regroup with their colleagues to relay their discoveries. In response, Barnes leads them to the cargo hold, unveiling a colossal sphere within. Cognizant of the potential peril, Barnes elects to install a security camera in the vicinity. Norman astutely observes that despite the fixation on the sphere, none of their reflections appear upon its polished surface, an anomaly not lost on the team. Retreating to the safety of the Habitat, the group engages in a fervent exchange of conjectures and hypotheses. Ted posits that the vessel's purported crash might, in fact, be a consequence of its entanglement within the fabric of a black hole, propelling it through the corridors of time. Their deliberations are abruptly interrupted by news of an impending storm on the surface, compelling them to expedite their departure. Later, in the privacy of their quarters, Harry somberly confides in Norman, expressing a grim premonition of their demise. He elucidates that the entry event, recorded as unknown in the logbook, is indicative of their inability to document the encounter, suggesting an ominous uncertainty surrounding their fate. As the group settles in for the night, Harry voices a longing desire to explore the interior of the enigmatic sphere. Shortly thereafter, the tranquility is shattered by the shrill sound of an alarm, prompting Barnes to hurriedly review the surveillance footage. To their collective horror, they witness Harry's inexplicable approach toward the sphere, his reflection materializing eerily before his sudden vanishing act. Determined to unravel the mystery and rescue their missing comrade, Barnes declares their unwavering commitment to remain submerged until Harry is found. In a bold act of courage, Norman dons a diving suit and ventures back into the depths of the spacecraft in a desperate bid to retrieve Harry. As Norman fixes his gaze upon the inscrutable sphere, Harry unexpectedly reappears on the ground beside him. Despite exhibiting normal vital signs, Harry remains unresponsive, trapped in a perplexing state of unconsciousness. Norman's attention is abruptly drawn back to the sphere, as his reflection materializes upon its gleaming surface. Suddenly the surrounding lights flicker and die out, plunging them into darkness and severing their connection with Barnes above. In the ensuing moments, power is restored, but the realization dawns upon Barnes that they are now reliant solely on internal power reserves. The submarine is gone, and they are marooned in the depths, destined to remain submerged for an indeterminate period. While Norman cautiously escorts the unconscious Harry back to the habitat, maintenance worker Fletcher undertakes the crucial mission of resetting the timer on the mini-sub. Barnes elucidates the necessity of this routine, emphasizing its role in signaling their continued survival to the Navy. Failure to reset the timer would trigger an automatic ascent of the mini-sub to the surface. En route to the habitat, Fletcher's attention is arrested by the presence of a cluster of jellyfish gracefully gliding through the water nearby, a serene yet captivating sight amidst the backdrop of their precarious situation. Initially entranced by the mesmerizing sight of the jellyfish, Fletcher's delight swiftly transforms into horror as the creatures draw nearer, their tentacles adhering to her protective suit. A wave of panic courses through her as she senses the jellyfish invading her body, prompting frantic attempts to evade their relentless pursuit. Despite her desperate struggles, the relentless assault of the jellyfish leads to irreparable damage to her suit, allowing water to seep in. Tragically, Fletcher succumbs to the merciless depths, her life tragically claimed by the ocean's unforgiving embrace. With heavy hearts, the team retrieves Fletcher's lifeless body, the somber silence punctuated only by the solemn echoes of their grief. In a moment of vulnerability, Norman reveals his lifelong fear of jellyfish, stemming from a traumatic childhood encounter, adding a poignant layer to the tragedy unfolding before them. Upon closer examination, Beth discerns the unfamiliarity of the jellyfish species, a revelation that deepens the mystery surrounding their encounter. In a private conversation, Barnes confronts Norman, chastising him for withholding Beth's mental health history, particularly her past attempt at self-deletion. Concerned that this revelation may jeopardize the mission, Barnes fears that Beth's emotional stability could potentially compromise their efforts. Tensions escalate as an impassioned argument ensues, only to be abruptly interrupted by Ted's urgent announcement that Harry has regained consciousness, momentarily eclipsing the brewing conflict. Gathered in the kitchen, the team observes Harry with a mixture of relief and curiosity as he eagerly indulges in his meal, remarking on the delightful simplicity of the flavors. However, their sense of reassurance quickly gives way to bewilderment as Harry cryptically confirms his venture into the sphere, yet remains reticent about the mechanics of his entry. A puzzling revelation given the sphere's apparent lack of openings. Moments later, Harry's demeanor takes a sudden turn as he recoils in panic upon learning that the dish he's consuming is calamari. His abrupt reaction sends ripples of unease through the group, prompting probing questions about the source of his distress and casting a shadow of uncertainty over their already precarious situation. Amidst the commotion, Ted springs into action, swiftly performing the Heimlich maneuver on Harry upon mistaking his distress for choking. However, Harry reassures them that he isn't choking but rather simply detests calamari, easing the tension with a wry smile. As Ted resumes his seat, Barnes summons him to the computer, alerting him to some concerning anomalies. Together, they grapple with the technical issues at hand, their focus consumed by the urgent task before them. In a serendipitous moment, Harry regains consciousness, his attention drawn to the numbers displayed on the screen. With a spark of insight, he directs Ted's attention to the possibility of the numbers being binary code and suggests decrypting them using a circular keyboard layout to mirror the spherical configuration of the mysterious sphere. The group watches, with bated breath, as Ted sets out to unravel the enigmatic message, their collective anticipation mounting with each keystroke. As Ted deciphers the binary encoded messages, the group is stunned to uncover a series of communications purportedly sent by an enigmatic individual named Jerry. The messages, though seemingly innocuous with sentiments like, "Hello," and "I'm happy," evoke a sense of unease among the team. Norman's apprehension casts a shadow over the moment of discovery, his concern centered on the potential consequences should this mysterious entity, Jerry, become displeased. The implications of engaging with an unknown entity, particularly one capable of communication through the sphere, loom ominously, prompting a sobering reflection on the precarious nature of their predicament. Afterward, Norman detects an unusual thumping noise emanating from outside the ship. Attempting to discern its origin, he reaches out to another maintenance worker for clarification but is met with silence. Norman promptly notifies Barnes of the situation, prompting Barnes to investigate. Upon inspection, Barnes makes a startling discovery. The worker is positioned outside the habitat. Norman and Beth embark on a search mission to locate her, only to uncover a grim reality: she has succumbed to death. The source of the unsettling noise is revealed to have been her foot striking against the wall. As Beth examines the body more closely, she is horrified to observe that it has been pulverized. As Norman and Beth transport the body back to the station, a startling occurrence unfolds. Eggs begin to plummet to the ground seemingly out of nowhere. Barnes, monitoring the sonar, detects a troubling presence and urgently instructs the duo to expedite their return, warning of the encroaching unknown entity. Upon their safe return indoors, the entity vanishes from the sonar, heightening the sense of apprehension. Subsequently, Barnes and Norman convene at the computer, deliberating on a strategy to establish communication with Jerry. However, their discussion is abruptly interrupted by an unexpected development. A message materializes, inquiring about the concept of a game plan. This revelation signifies that Jerry possesses the ability to eavesdrop on their conversations, instilling a newfound sense of vulnerability and uncertainty within the group. As Jerry's communication ceases, the entity resurfaces on the sonar, accompanied by the inexplicable phenomenon of eggs descending outside the habitat once more. Beth astutely suggests safeguarding the sensor grid, prompting Barnes to attempt activation of the high-voltage current, only to inadvertently trigger a fire instead. As tension mounts, the entity draws nearer, revealing its true form, a colossal squid that menacingly pounds against the habitat. Despite the cacophony, Harry remains undisturbed, oblivious to the chaos unfolding outside as he continues to slumber peacefully in his quarters. With the pressure plummeting, Barnes swiftly dispatches Ted to rectify the issue. However, as Ted maneuvers to adjust the valve, he is unexpectedly jolted by a surge of electricity, propelling him forcefully into the wall and rendering him unconscious. In a race against time, Norman rushes to take Ted's place at the valve, even as the relentless onslaught of the squid persists. Responding to the escalating threat, Barnes issues a directive for Norman to once again activate the high-voltage current. As Norman hesitantly pulls the lever, the squid vanishes from sight. But the room is engulfed in flames, a consequence of the tumultuous events unfolding in their underwater sanctuary. As the group mobilizes to extinguish the spreading flames, Ted regains consciousness and joins the effort. However, the situation takes a tragic turn when the emergency doors are activated, posing a grave threat of entrapment. In a desperate bid to prevent this, Barnes hastily wedges a box to block the doors, but a fatal misstep proves to be his undoing as the box slips, leading to Barnes being crushed to death beneath the weight of the descending door. Simultaneously, Ted finds himself ensnared beneath a portion of the collapsing ceiling, unable to free himself. In a selfless act of sacrifice, Ted implores Norman to flee while there is still time, resigning himself to his fate as the flames encroach upon him. In the aftermath of the tragedy, Norman endeavors to seek answers from Jerry, only to be met with a cryptic response. Jerry's revelation of his ability to manifest additional threats casts a pall of uncertainty over Norman's already fraught predicament, leaving him grappling with the unsettling realization that their ordeal is far from over. As Norman endeavors to elucidate the lethal consequences of Jerry's manifestations, the enigmatic entity dismisses Norman's attempts, urging him to refrain from addressing him as Jerry. Undeterred, Norman proceeds to check on Harry, finding him engrossed in 20,000 leagues under the sea. Despite Norman's recounting of the recent attack, Harry remains unperturbed, albeit revealing his apprehension toward progressing beyond a certain page due to the book's unsettling nature. Norman candidly confides in Beth, expressing his suspicions regarding Harry's demeanor and potential involvement in the escalating incidents. With a sense of vigilance, they devise a plan. Norman will undertake the task of resetting the mini-sub, while Beth will keep a watchful eye on Harry to prevent any interference. The weight of suspicion hangs heavy in the air as they navigate the precarious landscape of uncertainty and mistrust. As Norman swiftly completes the reset task, he encounters a perilous predicament on his return journey. Bubbles escaping from his suit, signaling a potential hazard. Seeking assistance, he calls out to Beth, only to be met with Harry's unexpected response, reassuring him of his own minor issue with a faulty valve. Pressing on, Norman's progress is impeded by a sudden attack from a snake, resulting in a frantic struggle before the creature retreats, allowing Norman to safely reach the habitat. Later, the group is taken aback to observe Beth venturing into the spacecraft. Questioned about her actions, Beth explains her quest for food due to dwindling supplies, prompting Harry's contradictory assertion of ample provisions in the kitchen. Norman, incensed by Beth's apparent breach of trust, confronts her vehemently, accusing her of neglecting her duty to keep watch. He further points out the inconsistency regarding the food supply, intensifying the atmosphere of confusion and mistrust within the group. As Norman's admonishment persists, Beth reaches her breaking point, lashing out and reproaching Norman for placing more trust in Harry than in her. She pointedly highlights Norman's own reticence regarding his activities within the sphere, underscoring the imbalance in transparency within the group dynamic. When Norman presses Beth about whether she also ventured into the sphere, she abruptly exits the room, leaving Norman to grapple with his own unsettling thoughts. Later, Norman's unease deepens as he discovers multiple copies of Harry's book scattered about the room, prompting a disquieting realization that Beth's earlier assertions were indeed correct. Desperate for clarity, Norman directs his inquiries to the computer, only to receive the familiar response urging him to abandon the moniker, Jerry. Determined to unravel the truth, Norman meticulously reviews the code and makes a startling discovery. The entity is not Jerry, but rather, Harry. Meanwhile, Beth takes decisive action, leaving the habitat to set up explosives. Upon her return, Norman shares his revelation with her, disclosing Harry's role as the entity responsible for the manifestations plaguing them. Norman implores Beth to peruse page 87 of the book, revealing a description of a monster with formidable tentacles, an ominous parallel to the creatures they've encountered. Recognizing the connection between Harry's fear of squids and his newfound ability to manifest his thoughts, the duo resolves to induce a deep slumber in Harry to quell the manifestations. Their plan set in motion, Norman and Beth scour the ship for medical supplies, in search of a potent sedative to incapacitate Harry and halt the sinister manifestations once and for all. They covertly infiltrate the room, where Norman swiftly restrains Harry while Beth administers the injection, inducing unconsciousness. Later, a message arrives from the surface, announcing improved weather conditions and a 6-hour window for their return. Norman heads to a flooded bathroom to brush his teeth, unwittingly attracting a snake slithering up his pants. His screams summon Beth, who promptly apprehends the serpent, recognizing it as the world's deadliest snake, an anomaly underwater. Subsequently, Beth directs Norman to the lab, where she locks him in and reveals his inadvertent role in manifesting the snakes. Intent on quelling the danger, she insists on administering a sedative injection. Norman remains skeptical, prompting Beth to cite examples supporting her theory. Harry's unconscious state renders him incapable of manifesting the snake, and the jellyfish correspond to Norman's fears, paralleling Harry's experience with the squid. Undeterred by Norman's reluctance to cooperate, Beth resorts to drastic measures, depleting the oxygen supply in the room, causing the lab to flood. Refusing to yield, Norman plunges into the water to retrieve an oxygen canister and escapes through a hatch. Meanwhile, Beth searches the computer and stumbles upon videos of Barnes questioning her mental state, and Norman's admonishment, fueling her anxiety and prompting her to leave the room. Upon Norman's return, he hears Beth's sobs and endeavors to console her, realizing that they too were unwitting participants inside the sphere, akin to Harry's experience. As Harry regains consciousness, Norman wastes no time in elucidating the grim reality. The sphere has granted them the ability to materialize their thoughts into existence. A power that likely led to the demise of the original crew, consumed by paranoia and delusions. Their discussion is abruptly interrupted by the computer's announcement of activated explosives outside the habitat, signaling imminent danger and a narrow window of 13 minutes to evacuate. Beth reveals that the explosives were initially intended to eradicate coral, but were repurposed as a defense mechanism against the manifestations. Initially attributing the activation to a new manifestation, Beth realizes with horror that her own subconscious thoughts triggered the explosives, spurred by her contemplation of self-deletion. To compound their dire situation, Harry points out the catastrophic potential of the explosives, containing liquid hydrogen that threatens to obliterate everything in its path. The team swiftly moves towards the mini-sub, eager to escape, but encounters a perplexing setback as they struggle to activate it. In a sudden and bewildering turn of events, they find themselves inexplicably transported into the spacecraft. Despite their concerted efforts to locate an exit, they find themselves trapped in a bewildering maze, endlessly circling without progress. Their frantic search leads them to a pivotal moment as they stand before the enigmatic sphere. Norman's reflection delivers a cryptic directive, compelling him to press the button, setting the stage for a potentially decisive turn of events. Upon grasping the nature of their predicament, Norman urges his companions to relinquish their thoughts, prompting an immediate return to the confines of the mini-sub. With a decisive push of the button, Norman sets the mini-sub in motion, propelling them towards the surface, just in the nick of time, to evade the cataclysmic explosion that obliterates the habitat in its entirety. Upon reaching the surface, the group undergoes decompression before convening in a secluded location to deliberate their next course of action. They grapple with the realization that divulging the truth to the Navy would likely be met with incredulity, compounded by the likelihood that the sphere was obliterated in the explosion. Beth highlights the lingering concern regarding their latent power, acknowledging the potential for its misuse or the inadvertent manifestation of perilous entities. The prospect of wielding such power, fraught with uncertainty and danger, weighs heavily on their minds as they confront the daunting responsibility it entails. As Norman voices his concern that the power is already in the wrong hands, Harry proposes a daring solution: to utilize the power to erase their memories of the entire ordeal. Recognizing the potential ramifications, including the enigmatic unknown designation on the ship's log, the trio joins hands and concentrates on expunging all recollections associated with their mission and the sphere's power. In a surreal twist of fate, the sphere emerges from the depths of the ocean and ascends into the sky with remarkable velocity, vanishing into the vast expanse of outer space. As the scientists open their eyes, they find themselves bewildered, unable to comprehend the inexplicable act of holding hands, their memories of the extraordinary events erased by their own volition.